Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, CEO Amit Kumar from Anixa Biosciences, ticker symbol ANIX. Anixa is a clinical stage biotechnology company focused on the treatment and prevention of cancer. Anixa's therapeutic portfolio consists of ovarian cancer immunotherapy program being developed in collaboration with the Moffitt Cancer Center, which uses novel type CAR T known as chimeric endocrine receptor T cell technology. The company's vaccine portfolio includes vaccines being developed in collaboration with the Cleveland Clinic to treat and prevent breast cancer. Here at Alpha Wolf, we look for companies that can have a positive impact on humanity, and Anixa certainly qualifies as one of those companies. But I'm going to let Amit tell you more about Anixa in just a minute. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a follow-up to a really interesting story before, and it got even more interesting last week, where I saw something interesting. We'll bring it up in a second. But Amit Kumar from Anixa Biosciences, ticker ANIX. I think the more fascinating part to this story is what you're doing with breast cancer and ovarian cancer. But there is also a pretty hot subject out there called Bitcoin. And I saw a headline, something about somebody approved something for Bitcoin. Maybe Amit, first, thank you for coming in to give us an update, but maybe you can give us a little clarity on what the Bitcoin thing's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim, for having me again. I'm looking forward to doing a follow-up. It's interesting. We're a company that's working on breast cancer and ovarian cancer, as well as a whole bunch of other cancers, lung, prostate, and colon. And we're keeping people alive. There are people who wouldn't be alive if our stuff wasn't there. Yet I got more calls about the announcement last week where we had said that as a part of our financial management of our treasury assets, we were going to put some of our money into Bitcoin, a small sliver of capital. We have excess cash, and when you have a lot of cash, you typically, as a treasury function, will hold that cash in T-bills and other limited or no principal risk assets. And as interest rates are coming down, we said, let's take a small amount and put it into Bitcoin because we think that there are some opportunities there. But it's a limited amount and limited risk. And it got a lot of interest, much more so than, keeping people alive. So it's sort of a strange world that we're living in.
It is a very strange world, very sad statement, I think. I mean, the reason why you might be getting a little more interest on the Bitcoin thing was there was this gentleman that was on not long ago that was talking about how we get out of the deficit that we're in. And what he basically said was the US needs to buy all the Bitcoin, all of it.
Hmm.
And the end result, and he went through this thesis, and I have to say the thesis was very compelling, right? I mean, and he made some really good points. I don't know that the government would do that. I don't know if Trump, I have no idea, but it's really sounded interesting to me. So if that were to happen, your Bitcoin's going to be worth an awful lot, right?
Yeah, that's right. If that were to happen, That was a genius move on our part, right?
You were like incredible genius,
Yeah.
which would be a fantastic thing because then you have all kinds of money to apply towards more research to
Yeah.
the important thing, which is saving lives.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we're still a biotech company that's developing products that are intended to save people's lives. And that's the mission. That's my mission, personally, and that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years of research and development. And we're doing exactly that. We're, early stages of our clinical trials, but we're getting fantastic data, in the ovarian cancer I'm sorry, in the ovarian cancer therapy. We are treating terminally ill patients. These are patients who have failed all other approved therapies for ovarian cancer, and they've effectively been told by their physicians to go home and get your affairs in order because most likely they're going to be gone in 3 to 4 months. And during those 3 or 4 months, they're going to have a really, really poor quality of life.
Right.
Um, but, in our trial, even though it's early days, we are seeing some impact. One of the patients, for example, I spoke to her about 3 or 4 weeks ago. She was in the car with her husband, and they were giddy because she was told to go get her affairs in order. And now she's alive 20 months after we gave her our therapy and doing incredibly well. We've shown with biopsy and other analytical techniques that we have knocked out a chunk of her tumor. Not all of it, but we have knocked out enough, and that she's been alive for 20 months now and going strong, living a good life, good performance, meaning she's taking care of herself. She's, all good things. And because we were able to have some impact on her tumor, but not complete impact, we went back to the FDA and showed the FDA the data and said, can you give us permission to give this patient a second dose? Because she was the second patient on our trial. And so she got a very, very low dose because these trials require you to start off with very low doses. And perhaps if she were a later patient and she had gotten a higher dose, maybe we would have knocked out all or a bigger chunk of her tumor. And so we went to the FDA and said, let us give her a second dose. And they quickly said yes, which is no small thing. That getting
Right.
that FDA approval to get that second dosage is a big deal. And we gave her a second dose just a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to see how she does. And I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed, that we extend her life long enough that she dies from something else and not her cancer. And that would be my ideal situation. But even if we only I mean, I say only, even if we just extend terminal patients' lives by a year and a half to 2 years, that's a home run in the cancer world.
That's a grand slam because I mean
Yeah,
a lot of these therapies by weeks, they extend your life by weeks, or right. I mean, it's not to me, it's never been like if I had one of those illnesses, I would not go towards that therapy. I would say, if I'm going to get another month out of it, no, just let me go.
yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
mean, just let me go. That's
You
me.
may you may change your mind when you're there.
No, no, I won't. I'm pretty stubborn.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, some people are like that, but some people would want to get to the next Christmas or the next birthday or the marriage.
Yeah, I know. I know that. I understand that. I look at the costs of these things, and it's not going to matter because I can't take the money with me. But
Yeah.
maybe I think the money could be spent better elsewhere
Yeah. No,
than
yeah, absolutely. There are people with different points of view, but we want to develop these things and have it available. And you're right. We don't want to just extend your life by a few months. We want to try and either completely eliminate the cancer in your body or at least keep it at bay so you could live a lot longer. And that's what we've proven here. And again, it's early stages of the trial, and we need to do this with a larger number of patients, but it's incredibly exciting. The
it's
situation,
phenomenal to me. I mean,
yeah,
that's this.
the family's excited. The physicians are giddy about this, that are working on this trial with us because they've not seen anything like this before. And
Is the dose that you is that purely your therapy and nobody else's? Like no
that's correct.
combination?
That's correct. They have effectively failed every other approved therapy, and
Okay.
that's when we get them for our trial. Typically an ovarian cancer patient will go on, once she's diagnosed, we'll have some surgery and then we'll go on a platinum therapy, which is standard chemotherapy that's been around for decades. And most of the women will respond, but within 6 months to 18 months, almost all of them will become resistant. Then there are a couple of other second line and third line therapies that they will try. And again, some will respond, but some will not. And even if they do respond over a short period of time, they tend to become resistant. And so that's why outcomes for ovarian cancer patients are really bad. So after they failed all of those therapies that have already been approved, then they come to us for in our clinical trial because ours is still considered experimental. And then we treat them. And in this case, as I noted, we've had a tremendous success. And we want more patients like that. And as we go to higher doses, we expect to be able to get that. And my fingers are crossed because if we do, this will just change the outcome for so many patients who are expecting to die of ovarian cancer.
What happens if you wind up having after this second dose, if her tumor like is gone, what would happen in terms of what for you and for the what would that mean for the company, for the drug, for how soon can they get things to market?
Yeah, if we eliminate the tumor, first of all, that would be an amazing result.
Right, I know. I'm
Yeah,
not suggesting that's going to happen. I'm saying if it
yeah.
did.
No, but it could happen. And then, but for this product to get to the market, we have to show it on a number of patients. And eventually, what our plan is to show it for a handful of patients. And then at that point, we want to partner with a large pharmaceutical company to take it to commercialization. And so, I feel that if we get 6 to 8 patients that have this type of response, then we're golden. And this is a fantastic product for people who are dying of ovarian cancer.
Okay. All right. Now we'll talk about this other little program you have going on, the vaccine.
Yeah. So the vaccine, yeah, exactly. Little program. So the vaccine, in the world of cancer, there are two types of vaccines. In infectious diseases, there's only one type that we are all familiar with, including the COVID shot, all the way back to the first vaccine that was developed, which is the smallpox vaccine. And some of those vaccines, smallpox, polio, measles, have effectively eliminated those diseases from certainly the Western world and most of the rest of the world as well. And in cancer, though, there are two types of vaccines. There's a therapeutic vaccine where you give the vaccine to a patient who is battling cancer at the time to help his or her immune system attack the cancer. Um, and there's the prophylactic vaccine, which is similar to the infectious disease vaccines, where you give the vaccine to people who don't have the disease, who don't have cancer at the time, in order to prevent the onset of cancer. And so our vaccine operates in both modes. And I should also say that while cancer vaccine research has gone on for decades, no one has been able to get one approved. And the reason is there are some scientific molecular reasons why that is, because we believe that the molecular approach that other people have tried is flawed. And our approach, which was invented by a scientist at the Cleveland Clinic 2 decades ago, and has been researched by that research team at Cleveland Clinic, is a completely different approach that has never been tried before. And the data that we are seeing in our phase 1 clinical, the data we saw in animals was spectacular. And the data we're seeing in the phase 1 human clinical trials are spectacular also. In fact, we presented some of that data, most up-to-date presentation of that data last week, actually 2 Fridays ago on November 8th at the Society of Immunotherapy of Cancer conference, which is a major immunotherapy conference. And the data is looking fantastic. And as we go forward, we're planning a phase 2 trial that will begin in 2025. And in that phase 2 trial, we will have a control group that will allow us to determine how effective this product is, this technology is. Is it 90% effective, 80% effective, 70% effective, or 100% perhaps? And so we'll see how that goes in that trial. And if this vaccine lives up to the vision that we have, then potentially every woman in the world becomes a candidate. Every woman who's worried about breast cancer can take this vaccine. And I also want to say one thing. Vaccines are getting, are a controversial subject right now, obviously because of issues related to the COVID vaccine, and now that Robert Kennedy Jr. is potentially going to be running HHS, and he has some thoughts about vaccines, and I guess I should say he has some thoughts about mandating vaccines. Now, the government only mandates vaccines that are infectious disease vaccines, because potentially if you are unvaccinated and you catch a disease, you might be able to give it to someone else. But breast cancer is not an infectious disease. You don't get breast cancer by sitting next to someone who has breast cancer. So this is not a vaccine that the government would ever mandate. This is only something that you as a individual patient would say, I want it. And so we don't, the politics of vaccines is not even an issue for us.
Right. It's not something that comes into play here.
Yeah, exactly. It's, if you want it, you get it. If you don't want it, you don't have to get it. So, so that's what this vaccine is. And the data is looking amazing. We're incredibly excited about it. This vaccine, even before it was in humans, the animal data was so compelling that the United States Department of Defense decided that they wanted to fund this vaccine. And so all of the data that we're getting in humans right now is being paid for by the US Department of Defense, because they felt that this could be a game-changing technology. It's not something that will make a slightly better version of an existing product, which is what a lot of companies are working on. This is something completely game-changing. Imagine if you could just take a bunch of shots and not have to worry about breast cancer. Imagine if we could eliminate breast cancer as a disease, or a majority of breast cancers. That would just be spectacular. It would change the way we think about cancer. It would change the way we start looking at other types of cancers. If we can do it with breast cancer, there's no reason why we couldn't do it with other types of cancer as well. So we're starting with breast, and the data is looking really amazing.
And this all came about because I want to highlight this, because I think about it all the time. You like to read old clinical studies, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the things you were doing when you were somewhat retired. You were going through some clinical studies and just for fun.
Yeah, well, I've been in the biotech industry for like 30 years, and I was sort of on the sideline for a little while thinking about whether I want to get back in the game, and I decided to get back into the game, and we brought these programs on board, and they were all at the R&D stage, and we wanted to get them into human clinical testing as quickly as possible. And we brought them into
These are ones that you stumbled across, right?
That's right. I mean, I keep track of the literature, and I look at various things. I mean, this breast cancer vaccine, for example, when I learned of the scientific research in that area, at that time it hadn't been in humans yet, but I looked at it and I got very excited about it. And one of the advisors to me personally, a friend and a mentor to me, and an advisor to Anixa, is a gentleman named Mike Shepard. If people want to Google his name, they can Google his name. He was the inventor in the early days when he was at Genentech. He was the inventor of a drug called Herceptin. He did the invention and the preclinical work, and then it went into clinical testing and eventually became approved and was the first antibody therapy for breast cancer. And it has for certain types of breast cancer, and it has saved countless hundreds of thousands to millions of women's lives since it was approved, I think almost 18 years ago. And so I called Mike, and Mike knows more about breast cancer than pretty much anyone I know. And so I called him and I said, Mike, can you take a look at these publications, papers, and tell me if if you're thinking the same way that I'm thinking, that this could potentially be an amazing product that could have such an impact in breast cancer. And he said, absolutely. After he read the papers, he called me back and said, yeah. So I said, Mike, let's go to Cleveland Clinic, go talk to the inventor and see, talk to him directly and find out more. And so we both got on a plane, went to Cleveland, Ohio, and went to the Cleveland Clinic and spoke to the team there and learned a lot more. And we said, this could be an amazing thing for the world. And so we licensed the technology. This was in 2018. And at that time, the vaccine was still in the laboratory stage. And we said, let's partner together, get it into the clinic, get the data, get the FDA to give us the permission to put it into human testing. And that's where we are right now. And we're almost complete with the phase 1, and soon we'll be soon we'll be beginning the phase 2. And so incredibly exciting. The data is very exciting. And because of the data in humans, animal data is great, but human data is even better, obviously. And because of the data that we're seeing in humans, we believe this approach could be used for vaccines in a bunch of other areas. And so we have another version of this vaccine in ovarian cancer that is being evaluated and funded by the National Cancer Institute. So the breast cancer vaccine is funded by the DoD. The ovarian cancer vaccine is being funded by the National Cancer Institute. And Cleveland Clinic and us have started initial research on lung, prostate, and colon cancer. So this is lung, prostate, and colon are just starting, so it may take a little while, but I can see one day, sometime in the future where we can get a few shots and not have to worry about many of the biggest cancers in the world. I mean, I just can't imagine it just would be an amazing world.
I mean, they would have to make a statue for you or something. I mean, your whole team, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm not, I'm sort of the front man here speaking about it. I'm the CEO of this company, but there's a huge number of people that are involved in all of this research, and also many people that will be involved in the future. So under no circumstances could I say I should get all the credit. It's a whole, it's a very large team approach. In fact, the paper that we presented at the conference 2 weeks ago had 19 co-authors on it, all from the Cleveland Clinic, who were, and these are the scientists and the physicians who have worked on this vaccine to publish that data. But that's just, some of the 19 people. We've had so many nurses and technicians and other physicians work on it. Anyway, make a long story short, Tim, it's a big team. It's not just me.
You know what? Even going back to the original person that started the whole, right? I mean,
inventor, yeah.
I mean, I'm all about the impact, right? This is the biggest thing that I've done, this complete rebranding, because it's the impact that you can have while you're here that matters. I mean, that's the only thing that matters, actually.
Yeah.
And I see so many people wasting so much time on stuff that really is going to have no impact. It's a waste of time, right? Even social media today. I mean, you look at it and the amount of time that people spend on it, it's really an ineffective use of your time, right? Especially if you get caught up in some of this social, some of this really stupid stuff. I mean, it's just not And there are so many things that even just the average Joe, the average retail investor, can get involved in by finding out about a company like this. I mean, when I interview a company, the first thing that I do is I start going through my Rolodex that's in my head, and I'm thinking, who could either who could this help, or who could benefit from this information, or is there somebody that I could put these two companies together and they could help each other? That's how my brain works. I just start thinking about all of the connections that I can create for that, right? So
Yeah.
this is, yes, I want investors to be aware of this, but I also want people that may be suffering from breast cancer to be aware of this, or have a loved one that's suffering from breast cancer, that's or ovarian, and that this even exists, right? I mean, I think that's one of the benefits that people can. You want to talk about stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and talk about stuff like this that is really could make a tremendous impact on the world, right? So one of the things that I love about you specifically is the fact that you are very aware, because you came from the biotech industry. You know that they're cash burning machines, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Biotechs are they are it can be a very exciting industry. It can also be very costly, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing about biotech is that even though we've learned so much about the human body and disease, we've just scratched the surface. And that's why many biotech companies run clinical trials, and more of them fail than succeed. So when you have clinical trials that are continuously providing good data, then it's headed in the right direction. And just commenting on what you said about thinking, people are doing things that are wasting their time. I don't want to be judgy. If you like social media, and you want to discuss things, that's fine. That's it's a free country. You can do that. I and my team and the people I work with, the physicians and so forth, we see sick people all the time. We see, and I've had, cancer in my family, as probably everyone who's listening to this has had cancer in their family, themselves, or friends, or will have cancer at some point in the future. And when you get cancer, then all that other stuff is no longer important, right? It's what are you going to do to save your life? And so when that happens, we want to be there. We want to have things to help those people. And that's the way we think about things. The most frustrating thing for us is that these processes go slow. And because they go slow, every day that, we're not able to get this product to people, people are dying. And so, that's a little bit frustrating. So we work very hard on these programs, but, there are certain logistical things that just make it slow. And then your comment, the last thing you mentioned is about cash burning biotechs, and biotechs burn a lot of cash. And I have my previous biotech company was just like that. We burned a lot of cash, had to raise a lot of money because we had a very big research and development group. With this company, I built it very differently. And so we're not burning a lot of cash. Last time we raised money was in 2021, almost, 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And we still have strong cash amount on our balance sheet. The key is that we have structured relationships with organizations that have world-class scientists and physicians that ordinarily we wouldn't even be able to hire because they want to work in academia. And so, for example, I mentioned that presentation that we did at SITC, and it had 19 co-authors. So 19 physicians and scientists and worked on that study that we presented, but none of the 19 are on my payroll. I'm not paying for them because the U.S. Department of Defense is funding that. And so I didn't have to build the laboratory the Cleveland Clinic already has. I didn't have to get all the permits that Cleveland Clinic already has. I didn't have to go get access to patients that Cleveland Clinic already has. And they did all of this. And again, those scientists and physicians are world-class scientists and physicians that would never even work for a private company because they want to work in academia where they're doing great stuff for the purpose of helping mankind. And so, and we're doing that too, but as a CEO, I also have to look out for shareholder value. And so we're obviously aware of that issue, and that's one of the reasons why we built this company without having, in a way that doesn't require us to raise a tremendous amount of cash. I mean, if people look back at our financials since 2017, which is when I took over this company, we've only burned about $5 to $6 million a year. And that covers all the R&D, covers all the clinical studies, all the, tremendous costs of being a public company and whatnot. And we'll continue to be frugal. The burn has risen a little bit, but again, it's gone up to about 7, 8, and that's still tiny compared to most biotechs that are in clinical trials. And so we're very proud of that. We are very fiscally frugal, and we will continue to do that because that's the best way to create shareholder value.
Yeah, that's what I love about you. And that's what the whole thing you pointed it all out, right? I didn't even know the Department of Defense got involved in any kind of biotech or anything. I mean, I just had no idea that even occurred. When you told me that the first time we met, I was like, wow, that is some creative financing right there, right?
Yeah.
My question for you is if the efficacy continues to move in the way that it's moving, does the Department of Defense, do they continue to finance that? I mean, is there a portion where the Department of Defense says, that's it, that's all the funding you're getting, or would they stay involved for an extended period of time?
It's possible. We're in the process of applying for some additional non-dilutive funding. But right now we don't know what's going to happen. You've got um, Elon Musk and
Look, I know that whole thing, right? I mean, everybody in the government is like probably nervous about their
yeah,
jobs, right?
yeah.
I don't think, and I don't get the sense that Elon is going to. I just don't get the sense. I think he's a good human being. I just look at what he's done for humanity, right? Um, and he's impacted humanity in a very positive way. And I know his biggest goal, his thing is to make us interplanetary. That is because
Yeah.
he thinks that we're going to wind up destroying this planet at some point. Maybe it isn't us that does it. Maybe it's another asteroid. Who knows, right? But his fear is that if something catastrophic happens here and we're not interplanetary, then that's the end of humanity.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's his.
my point is that there's a lot of uncertainty with the government right now. We don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. And so, we would love to get, DOD continue to be involved, but we don't know. And I can't guarantee that because there's a lot of uncertainty going forward. And, whether you're in favor of that or not in favor of that is your own political decision, point of view. But frankly, regardless, we're going to move forward. We're going to keep doing clinical trials, and we're going to eventually get this thing.
Do you have so let's say the DOD, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if the funds run out from the DOD, what is plan B that is not going back to the model of being a cash burning machine? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
as you get further along, the trials get bigger, right? And they
Yes.
get more costly,
Yes.
right? So that I guess that's what I'm trying to say is if the DOD falls out, do you have other very creative paths to maybe.
Yes. The
Okay,
answer to that is yes. I can't talk about all of those things
right,
right now
I know.
publicly, but one of our goals that I stated earlier is that we want to get to a point where we can get in bed with, to be vulgar, with a pharma company to help commercialize these products, finish up the latest last part of the clinical trials and then eventually commercialize. There's no reason why a small company like us has to go raise a lot more money to build a manufacturing facility, to build sales distribution. Pharma companies have tens of thousands of salespeople. They have a distribution infrastructure. And imagine a product like this breast cancer vaccine. If it gets to the point where it is a vaccine that could be used by millions to hundreds of millions to billions of women, a company like us will never be able to distribute it. That's like, you're distributing, Coke to, Coca-Cola to, the world, right? You need that kind of an infrastructure. And
Right.
we don't have that, but Pfizer does, Merck does, Glaxo does. And, those are the companies that would commercialize this product and we would have a revenue share. The beauty of that is that we take advantage of their investment in the infrastructure, just like we're taking advantage of the investment the Cleveland Clinic has made in its infrastructure to do, to work with us on R&D. And we also get to the market and sales much faster because if we were a small company, we'd have to start out small and get bigger and bigger and bigger. Pfizer would start out big and get
Right.
bigger. So that's the plan. And so I can't tell you specifically about Plan B, but there are Plan Bs.
Yeah.
Plus we have 3 years of cash on our balance sheet. So, we have plenty of money to get us through major clinical
And
milestones.
if Bitcoin takes off, you're golden, right?
Yeah.
So you got them all covered. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I just want people to know more about you guys. I think they need to start paying attention to your story because I think it is incredibly exciting story, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I
And
appreciate that. Yeah.
the chart is kind of indicating that you're just like in this little no man's land. So let me ask you, you dose the second dose. When uh, how long between, I mean, when do you start to get some readback on the data?
So we're going to be having, periodic scans of the patient, but ultimately, we want to just see how long she lives, and we're going to follow her for 15 years. I'm not saying we're not, we're not going to get data before that, but we anticipate data in a matter of months on every patient where we scan them when we, before we dose them to look at the baseline tumor, and then we scan them a month after the dose, 3 months after the dose, 6 months after the dose, and then continuous. And so we
And
start
would
seeing.
you have, I mean, if you did notice a difference, but it wasn't significant, would you wait to a certain period of time to make sure that there is some significance here, or would you be just announcing as you're noticing the differences?
Yeah, no. In that trial, because these are terminal patients, we tend to announce as we start seeing results.
Okay.
With the breast cancer vaccine, because those are not terminal patients, we tend to group them together. It wouldn't make sense to announce on a single patient by patient basis what's happening. But with these patients, they're expected to pass. And so we will announce what we see on a patient by patient basis.
Anything else that you would like people that are watching to know?
Well, this is something that I mentioned on your last on our last interview, and that is that, as I said, every company, every CEO will tell you that they've got the greatest thing in the world, and some do, most don't. And I'm telling you, I've got the greatest thing in the world too. But I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I've bought over $2 million worth of stock. Our board and other insiders have bought millions of dollars worth of stock since 2017 when we took over, because we're incredibly bullish about this company. And so, I think that should give people some comfort. And then, the only other thing I want to mention is that for small cap biotech, the last 2 or 3 years has been really rough. If you just put up any biotech company, development stage biotech company, and look at their chart over the last 2 or 3 years, it's just been rough, no matter how well you're doing. Now, many of those companies have poor data or have failed or are running out of money. None of that applies to us. We have great data. We've got great partners. We've got good balance sheet, clean capital table, strong insider buying.
What
But
size? How big is the TAM on those? Just those two?
Oh, I mean, in the United States, there are 40,000 women that get diagnosed with ovarian cancer every year, and almost all of them will eventually die and will need some, therapy that cures them. And then breast cancer, that's I don't even want to contemplate the size of that
It,
because
it's it,
every woman in the world potentially becomes a candidate. But you have to think about practical matters. In the Western world, women will probably want to take the breast cancer vaccine. In certain parts of the world, women are worried about getting a meal for their child tomorrow, and they're not worried about breast cancer,
right.
20, 30 years later. So, there are practical matters that are important there. But even if it's just the United States and the Western world, developed economies, it's a massive market. So I don't even talk about the number because it's huge.
Right. It's I would imagine it's a probably a trillion number.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, we're not, we wouldn't price it so it becomes a trillion because then a lot of people wouldn't be able to get it.
Right.
Healthcare systems wouldn't be able to get it, but it's a big number.
But that's still, you see, that what you just said right there is another wonderful thing to hear, right?
Yeah,
I like you. I like who you are as a person, right? And these are you deserve to have a big win. I hope you have a big win because I think it's going to be a big win for everybody, right? That's
exactly. If I have a big win, our team has a big win, our collaborators have a big win, the world has a big win. And so it would be great if we all do that.
absolutely. And you're early. I
Yeah.
think you're definitely early because I just don't think that a lot of people know about the story. I really
Yeah,
don't.
and that's exactly right. As I mentioned, I took over in 2017. Before that, the company was a electronics company, and it had failed and was delisted and about to go bankrupt. And I got involved and took it over, and me and my team uh, turned it into a biotech company that's doing something incredibly substantial.
And this is where people can have influence, and it doesn't always require to be an investor. And I will say this too: if you're a retail investor and you don't have a big um, bank account to invest, look, you're talking about a $3.22 stock.
Yeah,
Here's what's your risk, what's your reward, right? Risk is it goes to zero. You
yeah,
lose $3 and whatever cents.
yeah,
I don't think they're going to go to zero because I think the results are now, as of right now, today, are compelling enough that I definitely don't think you're going to zero, right?
yeah,
And maybe it doesn't cure breast cancer, or maybe it doesn't cure, but it gives people if you could, a lengthy extension to their life that they, in a better quality of life, which is, I guess, the thing you really want to
yeah,
focus on,
yeah.
right? Uh, those are very powerful, meaningful things.
Yes.
So even with those results where we're at right now today, I think this is a very understood company
Yeah,
or under noticed company,
yeah.
right? So uh, if you look at the chart from a technical standpoint, I'm going to move my bull out of the way just so people can see what I'm talking about. But this is a very actually kind of a compelling looking chart, should be for the technical guys anyway, because it's been in this consolidation mode. I'm gonna move this here. Okay. And my stuff's kind of jacked up here. There we go. All right, there we go. It's kind of just moving sideways. It's stair stepping higher is what it's doing. So it had this little run up right here, had this little run up, and then it pulled back, and then it just kind of went sideways for a little bit here, and now it had another little pop. What was this recent pop for? Um,
What is that
it was
date?
Monday, October 28th.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we were doing, we had announced, I believe, I have to recall it, but we were going to be, we presented some data. We talked about the patients in that month, that period of time, especially the one who's doing really well. And we also announced that we were going to do a stock buyback because we had some excess cash. And so
And
we're,
do you know where the stock bar, what price the stock was when you announced the buyback?
I think it was in the twos. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
I have to,
So this is what I see. I see you've got you're starting to get a really defined area of support right at $3. I mean, that's becoming very clear to me, right? And why do I say that? I say that because uh, it keeps coming down to this $3 level, and
yeah,
it literally will sit there for a minute,
yeah,
and then it bounces off of it, right? So I don't know why I can't draw my line right now, but that's irritating. But
yeah,
uh, you've got resistance between 350 and $3, which is basically you're building a base. It says that nobody's really in charge of the stock, the bulls or the bears. Neither one is in charge. It's just kind of in wait and see mode. But the wider the base, when it finally does break, that's like a launching platform. So the wider the base, the higher the space, right? I think you have some very interesting things that are happening. You're going to start getting more data that's going to be announced, and then you're going to come into 2025, right? We're going to go through maybe a little bit of tax loss selling and all that stuff going into the end of the year, but then there's the Santa Claus rally, and who knows what else coming. But this, regardless, I want to emphasize this. The one thing about biotech and healthcare is no matter what the economy does, uh, healthcare is always going to matter, right? And if you have a big breakthrough in a disease like cancer, I can assure you that it isn't going to matter what the rest of the economy is doing. That particular stock is likely going to run, right? So,
yeah. I agree with you, and I'm not an expert on technical analysis, and so you're much more knowledgeable about that. But I agree. I think it feels like the stock is ready to move, and we just need the overall economy to start recognizing good biotech companies. We're sort of, lumped in with other smaller biotech companies, and the whole sector's been down. And also to your point, people don't know about us. And so I'm hoping, these events like this interview with you and other things that we are doing will at least alert
what
people.
I'm asking anybody that's watching this interview is, think about the people, go through your network in your head, and share this information because it doesn't do us any good. This is how you have impact, right? Is by sharing this, by making people aware,
Yeah,
and that starts to grow and feed on itself. And this is for a very, very good cause. This is a good thing to be a part of, right? If you help this company succeed, um, how many lives do you positively impact, right? And
yeah,
I guess when you said earlier that you don't want to be judgy, and I guess I am a little judgy, uh, because I think we are capable together, united, we can do incredible things. If we, as a society, as human beings, focused on not the things that we don't agree on, that actually, and a lot of them don't even matter that we don't agree on them, but the things that we can agree that, cancer is a nasty disease. It's one that needs to go away, right? Because a lot of people have suffered and died from cancer. My dogs died from cancer, right? I would love to see cancer go away. So if that's something that we can all get behind, we all agree that cancer should go away, that's worth spending a lot of time on. When you
yeah,
see there's someone here that could actually make a significant difference in that disease, right?
I agree, and I appreciate everything that you've said. And whether your viewers decide to join us on this journey as a shareholder or not, I encourage them all to at least put our ticker symbol on their watch list so that at least they can see the progress that we're making. They'll be able to see our press releases and announcements because we've got a lot of really neat things coming in the near future. And one day, I think the general market will recognize us, and those who have joined us will not only be doing good, but have a big financial gain as well.
Right.
So,
I
so
mean, if you can buy, and I guess I didn't finish my thought. This is not an expensive stock. I mean, you can take a weekend and not go out to dinner and at an expensive restaurant and buy the stock.
yeah,
Or don't buy the $1,000 pair of Nikes that you don't need. Buy the stock, right? I mean, these are things that I promise you, and it doesn't take a lot of shares to have something like this, if it really goes, change your life. I mean, it can change your life. Believe me, that's how I got here.
yeah,
It only takes one, and it can literally change your life. And it's something you can feel so good about too, because they're changing the world, right? I mean, it's just like this amazing thing. That's what the stock market offers you. There's a lot of talk about it being a rigged game, and you know what? There are a lot of bad people out there. But if you do your homework, you do your research, and you get to know people like Amit, and I like Amit. I want to help Amit, right? Because I like him as a person. That's the thing. You get to know the people behind the story. I would love to meet his whole team and see how passionate they are about what they're doing, right? That's what it is. That's what it's about. And there's people helping people. It always comes down to that for me. That's what
yeah,
a company is, right? What is it? It's a group of people that are passionate about something and trying to make the world a better place in all kinds of realms, not just in biotech. It's everywhere. They're trying,
yeah.
somebody's passionate. If there's a problem out there, I guarantee you, if it's been identified, there's somebody somewhere trying to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And
And I also want to make one comment before we're done, Tim, and that is that we didn't talk a lot about the underlying science of these technologies, and it's incredibly complicated for the non-scientific listener or viewer. But if anyone does want to talk, if you're a physician, if you're a scientist, and you want to talk about the underlying science, I'm more than happy to get on a phone call with you and talk to you about it. And
in
also,
our last one, in our first interview,
mhm,
you have a way of communicating things that were made it very simplistic for me to understand, right?
yeah, I think, yeah, that's exactly right. And I can do that for people who are not scientifically oriented. But, scientists like me want to get really deep into the details and that might get into the weeds on an interview like this, but if people are interested in really understanding why this vaccine, for example, we feel is going to work where every other vaccine has failed, I can get into the detailed molecular biology of the failed vaccines versus ours. And again, it may not be something anyone wants to do, but I just want
I've
to
always kind of
at it.
wondered because there's lots of biotech companies out there. Like there's one I just met with that is focused on T-reg, right? And making those that are dysfunctional functional, and it's interesting stuff. And I've always wondered, I mean, do these companies, because they're kind of competing against each other, right? Are they willing to have those conversations, or are they not willing to have those conversations because they're trying to protect their intellectual property?
It's a little bit of both. We as human beings want everyone to succeed because it's good for mankind. But we certainly want our own products and technologies to succeed because it's good for us and our shareholders. So it's a little bit of both. There is some competition, but there's also a lot of collaboration.
Okay. One more thing that I want to make sure, the cap structure, how many shares outstanding fully diluted?
We have 32 million shares outstanding, and I don't know the exact number, but we have probably a few million shares of, options and no warrants or anything like that. So,
So a
options are
very clean cap table.
very clean cap table.
Okay. That's important for everybody to understand. 32 million shares is, in my opinion, that is a light amount of shares, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's nothing. Usually you get over 100 to 200 million shares. That's where I think you start to get uh, meaningful share count, but we're nowhere near that. So,
Yeah.
I love this, man. Maybe we don't have anything before the end of the year, but if we do, anytime you feel as though you have something significant that you want to share or you're excited about, I'd love to hear from you, and we'll hop on. I'll make the room. We'll do it again.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, Amit. I'm gonna one more recommendation. I don't have their logo up, but I will by the time I get done editing this. Uh, I do highly recommend going to their website and signing up for investor alerts, right? So you put them on your watch list, but sign up for those investor alerts, because then when they do have a press release, it'll go get delivered right to your mailbox. So, all right, that's it on it. I'm gonna turn this off and I'll see you the next time. Okay.
Sounds good, Tim. Thanks.
All right, hold on one second.